From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on AgDay, could there be an easing of trade tensions between the U.S. and Asia as China's top economics minister arrives for high-level talks? Consequences of the dispute is felt by U.S. fruit growers.
That they've slowed down the process of imports, even on top of the 15% tariffs they've put on earlier this year.
Plus, in agribusiness, the market potential if a trade spat can be diffused.
But what it all spells is it's not only corn for feed, it's corn for energy.
We'll check on planting progress and see where the buffalo roam in Arkansas.
AgDay, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. U.S.-Chinese trade tensions take another historic step forward today as leaders from both nations meeting in Washington for another round of talks. The Chinese vice premier is set to arrive in Washington Tuesday. His team has already been in town for the past few days preparing for that meeting. Now, over the weekend, President Trump making a surprise turn, ordering changes on sanctions against Chinese telecoms after speaking with President of China, Xi Jinping. In return, reports Monday that China will remove its tariff threat on U.S. soybeans. Now, that sent soybean markets higher. The goodwill could help soften further negotiations. China's ambassador to Washington saying easing trade tensions between the U.S. and China could help a resolution be reached quickly. Segments of the ag industry hope new talks lead to reduced tensions. The produce industry, well, it's already facing what it thinks is retaliatory treatment as its products get stalled at port. The Chinese say it's increasing safety protocols as U.S. fruit sits idle at Chinese ports for days at a time. U.S. industry analysts believe it's China making a statement.
People do think that it's related to the trade tensions between the U.S. and China, that they've slowed down the process of imports, even on top of the 15% tariffs they've put on earlier this year.
In the wake of President Trump's tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, the Chinese slapping retaliatory tariffs on a first wave of U.S. products, including a 15% tariff on nearly all produce.
Specifically on Red Delicious, which is the variety that we would be shipping for the balance of this season, is that consumers demand our product. They were still planning on importing.
The tariffs also impacting the California citrus.
I mean, it adds about $5 to the carton price landed in China. So our offshore competitors, most notably Australia and Egypt, now have a major benefit.
The produce industry says the biggest threat is its product waiting on Chinese customs. The U.S. and China have a phytosanitary agreement in place, which means the Chinese typically inspect a limited number of boxes. As of 2 weeks ago, they were checking every shipment, slowing down the export process.
In general, I think a week, most commodities can deal with that type of delay if refrigeration is available to preserve it.
But if the crop isn't refrigerated, it can deteriorate quickly.
You can usually get the fruit landed and within 48 hours get it off the dock and out into the channels of distribution. Right now, it's a minimum of 5 days and in some cases 7 days.
Traditional shipments, which are sometimes delayed maybe a day or two, if at all, are now being delayed as long as 2 weeks.
The slowdown is to the point where Nelson says there's been some lost business. Both U.S. exporters and Chinese companies are canceling shipments or not placing orders due to the issue.
We're aware of about 4 to 6 loads, which is roughly 1,000 cartons per load. So it's not huge yet, but it's going to start to grow with this additional harassment.
Impact on growers. So yes, it's had an effect, but as time goes on, it'll be a cumulative effect and it'll be quite substantial.
Citrus products were the first to be stalled at customs. Freihofer visited China weeks ago. He said he received warning that other produce would eventually be sitting at Chinese ports as well. NAFTA negotiations are in the final leg. At least that's the hope in Washington. Leaders say moods are positive. The key ministers are not at the meetings this week yet, but they are on call. The biggest issues continue to be rules of origin for the auto sector. Other sensitive issues include investor-state dispute settlements, Canadian dairy, seasonal produce, and a sunset clause. House Speaker Paul Ryan said last week they need the language of the final agreement by May 17th. A total of 103 amendments were filed for the House Farm Bill. That bill is expected to be voted on this week, unless it's pulled back due to a lack of votes. Now, the Rules Panel will meet late Tuesday to set the terms of debate and again on Wednesday afternoon to decide which amendments can be considered on the House floor. Rain, severe weather, record heat, and drought helping to shape this week's crop progress report from USDA. We begin with corn planting, which nearly matches the 5-year average following weeks of delays. 62% planted, that's a point behind average. Illinois corn planting is in the home stretch at 90% complete, 20 points ahead of average. Iowa saw a 25-point jump from last week, but still lags that 5-year pace ever so slightly. Minnesota, Nebraska, and Ohio all showing 30-plus point gains. Soybean planting's pushing past the 5-year average with a third now in the ground. Illinois farmers, they have about 2/3 of the soy crop planted. That's more than 40 points ahead of average. The overall winter wheat picture, well, it continues to struggle with 36% rated good to excellent. That's a 2-point improvement from last week. Kansas wheat, 15% good to excellent. 42% now at the heading stage. Oklahoma, 11% of that crop good to excellent there. And a quick glance to the south, where rice planting reached 83%. Louisiana is leading the way. Wet, cool conditions this spring in parts of the south have Louisiana rice farmers playing catch-up, getting their fields planted and their crops up and growing. In northern Louisiana, good weather is finally allowing rice farmers to get into their fields, and they're headed into the home stretch now. In South Louisiana, the rice is out of the ground, but it hasn't grown much.
It slowed it down. Probably the rice we plant now is going to catch up to the rice we planted 2.5 weeks ago.
What we really need are days like this where we get some sunshine, we get some warmer temperatures, and I think that's really what we need in order to help that rice get a really good jump start on it.
Last year, a good portion of the rice crop in the southern part of the state was planted in late February and early March. The rice crop matured early, allowing the harvest to be in full swing before the peak of hurricane season in August. Now, they don't expect to see a repeat of that early harvest this year. Let's get a quick look at some field conditions. Mike Hoffman joining us now with today's crop comments.
Good morning, Clinton. One of our most loyal viewers sent this photo from southeast South Dakota. He says oats and new seed alfalfa are off to a nice start this year. Okay, to be honest, that photo came from reporter Betsy Gibbons' dad, who farms there. Perhaps we need to open a Farm Journal bureau in that part of the country. And from Fillmore County, Nebraska, a farmer posted on AgWeb that his corn and soybeans planting is finishing up in that area, but it could use a good drink of rain. He says they're about 4 inches below normal for the year so far. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, not a whole lot across the country. You can see some pockets of breezy conditions, lower Great Lakes, northern plains. And that area in the northern plains moves into northern Minnesota later on today. A little bit in the mid-Atlantic on the windy side later today. And then tomorrow morning, depends on where thunderstorms develop in the southwestern plains, but there could be a burst of wind there first thing in the morning. And then you can see some pockets out west and mid-Atlantic once again tomorrow afternoon. We'll have your forecast coming up in a few minutes, but first here are some hometown temps.
Keeping track of the shifting market prices has never been so easy. Get the latest commodity prices sent directly to your cell phone with market updates. Just text MARKETS8 to 31313 to get started.
We'll continue the China conversation over at the Agribusiness Desk, including the remaining market potential. That's coming up next. And later, a variety of bovine more common for Southeast Asia than Southwest Arkansas. But it works. We'll visit the farm later on AgDay.
AgDay, brought to you by new Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans. Achieve personal best yields.
As the Chinese trade delegation makes its way to Washington, how is that relationship doing for American agriculture? Well, Tyne Morgan picks up the conversation from the Agribusiness Desk. Tyne?
Here now with Sue Martin of Ag and Investment Services. Sue, there's so much concern over China and nervousness when it comes to trade. But long term, you kind of have this bullish outlook on China and the need for more demand and more U.S. products.
Well, the one thing we have to keep in mind is the U.S. is the world's largest holder of corn stocks. And when we pull the U.S. out of the picture, foreign production deficits are record high. And that's because of the growing demand around the world. And of course, as we see economies get better, as of which China's is, and in the meantime, you have these endeavors by the president of China, Xi Jinping, with his goals to try to make everybody's lives better. You know, the one thing China wants the very least to happen is the fact that food becomes tight, supplied, or scarce. They have not forgotten Tiananmen Square. And so they're very concerned about that. And when they're looking ahead, you know, they have a record pork industry right now. They have huge record poultry. So protein is pretty aggressive there, and they're bringing beef in besides. Granted, the U.S.'s portion of that beef is small, but what it all spells is needing corn for not only energy, granted they've got feed wheat to be able to use as well, but it's not only corn for feed, it's corn for energy, and they have more vehicles. I think they have like 300 million cars versus our 200 and some, 227, something like that million. So it's just amazing. It's almost mind-boggling. But when you look at the fact that 36% of that population is in poverty, that's a big endeavor, and you don't just start it. If his goal was 2020, he's working on it now.
Really quick, don't have much time, but when do you think that starts to impact us?
I think it will start to impact us. You know, if you go back and you look at Argentina, they're the world's largest holder of soybeans stocks. And look how the bean market just started taking off when they started having issues. Same thing will happen if we get hit with a weather issue. And it doesn't have to be in Iowa, Indiana, Illinois. Texas, Kansas, those are two big corn states as well. And Colorado, you know, I just sort of wonder, you know, the summer's not out yet.
All right, Sue, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Let's take a break, and then we'll have much more here on Ag Day.
Talk markets one-on-one with Sue Martin. Call Ag and Investment Services toll-free at 1-800-527-0051 or visit her website, www.futurescashinfo.com.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman here, looking at the front draped over the middle of the country, and that's bringing some pretty active weather to places.
Yeah, north of it you get these big complexes of storms. South of it you can get a little bit better chance for severe weather in those scattered areas of thunderstorms. And you can see this morning that front moved a little bit farther north in the eastern Great Lakes. That's those complexes of thunderstorms north of there, and now it's coming back southward again. So it has been waving a little bit to us. You can see in the northeastern Gulf a tropical-like system, not out of the question. That gets named at some point. That'd be really early in the season, but it does happen sometimes. And you can see a weak system kind of staying in southern Canada over the next couple of days. As we head through later on today, you can see the storm system moving off the southern New England coast. Cold front draped through the Ohio River Valley will be the focus for showers and storms. Again, it stalls out across the central plains. System in the Gulf slowly moving northwards. Some computer models bring it a little quicker, some bring it a little slower. Either way, it's going to bring a fair amount of rain to many parts of Florida and eventually other parts of the southeast. By tomorrow morning, then, you can see high pressure builds back into the Great Lakes. Give you folks a rest from the rain for a while. There have been several days in a row with morning thunderstorms in some parts of the Great Lakes, and you can see by later on today lots of moisture with this system coming up out of the Gulf, so there'll be a widespread rain and thunderstorms there, and the stalled out front will be the focus once again from Arkansas all the way over into the mid-Atlantic, and a developing storm system, not a strong one, but enough to bring some pop-up showers and thunder showers to parts of the northern and central Rockies. There's a precipitation estimate past 24 hours. You can see from the mid-Atlantic back through the middle of the country. We've seen some, but most of it's been in the peninsula of Florida. We'll add some more in Florida over the next 36 hours, and you can see those pockets that get 1 to 2 inches of rain in parts of the south central plains into the mid-Atlantic, also the lower Great Lakes. Temperatures this afternoon on the cool side north of the front, but most of us are mild for this time of the year, even warm and muggy farther south. You can see low temperatures tomorrow morning. Only in the Great Lakes in the northeast is going to be what you would call cool. Comfortable, though, across the northern plains. Still muggy in the southeast, and more of the same tomorrow. In fact, the heat kind of goes back northward into the far northern plains as well. Here's the jet stream, and you can see the storm system moves off to the east. Then we don't have a lot going on across the country. We'll have small systems here and there. The remnants of that tropical-like system coming up out of the Gulf kind of gets caught in the flow and moves east. And our model showing a cutoff by early next week into the southwest again. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. Heading to Walla Walla, Washington today, partly sunny, very warm, high up to 87. Texarkana, Texas, partly sunny, hot and humid, high around 90. And Utica, New York, cloudy with rain showers, maybe a thunderstorm, high around 68.
When we come back, we'll look at the latest dairy price forecast from USDA. And did you know 95% of the water buffalo herd is located in Asia, the population ranging from 150 million to 180 million head? Well, coming up, we'll see how one Arkansas farmer is trying to carve out a small piece of that niche. The latest USDA WASDE report sharing fresh forecasts for the dairy industry and its May supply-demand estimates. The department calling for higher prices, higher milk prices in 2018 and 2019. The 2018 all milk price increased from $16.20 to $16.70 per hundred, with even slightly higher prices set for 2019. Now, milk production, it was forecast to increase slightly next year. That's on improving milk per cow numbers, with the herd size forecast to be relatively unchanged. New England dairy farmers are struggling with a shortage of milk processors, and they find themselves having to dump milk. Vermont Public Radio says there's too much production and not enough processing capacity. Production increases in the region have slowed, but it's still running 1.5% ahead of 2016 levels. Now, last year, about 170 million pounds of milk was dumped in the Northeast market, up from 119 million pounds from 2016. All right, thanks to smart management and breeding efforts, the American bison population is getting restored. Well, next, we'll see how one Arkansas farmer is trying to build the herd of a cousin, the water buffalo.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
Are you trying to stir things up a bit on your farm, diversify the operation? Well, a rancher near Texarkana, Arkansas sure did, and by doing so, he has created a niche market. In this report provided by the Arkansas Farm Bureau, Ken Moore takes us to the southwest corner of the state where the water buffalo roam.
Tucked away off Highway 82 just east of the Texarkana city limits is Tom and Shannon Olson's Turkey Creek Ranch, where you will find one of Arkansas's more unique livestock herds, water buffalo.
Each one has a different personality, so getting to know them and their easygoing nature, it was quite a change from regular cattle.
After raising Angus cattle for several years, the Olsons learned about water buffalo in the mid-'80s and bought a few. They liked them so much they began raising them exclusively in 1991 and established the country's first water buffalo dairy operation. At its peak, their herd numbered around 250. Word has spread about the ranch and has attracted tour groups. The buffalo's calm demeanor and longevity is what attracted the Olsons to them. Now they're selling some of their stock to help establish herds in other parts of the country.
They have long lives and they have a lot of calves. So from an economic standpoint, that's really helped the operation. And they'll start calving usually when they're about 3. So it's not unusual to have 16 to 18 calves per animal's lifetime. The world population of buffalo is about 182 million, and yet we only have 4,000 to 5,000 at the most here in the United States.
Miller County Farm Bureau provided lunch and grilled water buffalo burgers for the meal.
The meat itself is very low in cholesterol, lower than chicken. It's low calorie. It's good in protein and iron. So it's a win-win situation. You know, farming is kind of a tough business. It's a low margin business, and the buffalo gave us a little niche market that we didn't have with the cattle.
It was really interesting to see how they went from cattle to water buffalo, and they checked the water to see if there's anything else they were interested in doing. But it's really, really interesting to see that there's someone out there so close to us doing something so neat and out there that you don't really think about.
This is Ken Moore reporting.
Now, water buffalo are popular for their milk, which is the primary ingredient in old school mozzarella cheese. These days, it's more commonly made in this country with milk from dairy cows. That's all the time we have this morning. We're glad you tuned in. Spend part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.